Well, Irene was busy working here on the homestead. I was busy driving down to Prescott. Yet again, that's, I think, twice this week. Each trip is probably maybe 5 or 6 hours in length because there's always a lot of things to do. My primary goal for going down was I had to get some documents by the county. So I got those done, and then as long as I was down there, I made a delivery of a book that one of Irene's customers bought. Now, one of the things that I bought was I picked up some more PVC pipe, because you can never have too much PVC pipe. Well, let's see. There's a question about why this fan isn't working. I better check that. Because it's going to get too warm in here if we don't have that fan run. Well, it's not turning on at all. It should be running right now. Well, something else to look at this afternoon when I'm done with my board meeting. In any case, I bought 5 more sticks of PVC pipe. That will give me enough to get at least most of the area on the opposite side of the greenhouse from where I'm running water right now. The reason why I need to do that is because there's some plants that we'll be having on that side of the greenhouse that require water. I think what we're going to do is plant some of our plants in buckets, in soil, move them into the greenhouse, and water them. Now you may be wondering why I would put them in the greenhouse. Obviously we could put them outside and irrigate with the irrigation controller that's out there. And the reason is actually pretty simple. We've been unsuccessful at getting rid of all those rats. And if we put these plants outside, just hold on, I'm going to go up and turn this fan up. I'm going to turn that up because it rattles when I turn it up too high. So, guess I'll go turn on the water and get it to run the evaporative cooler to keep it from getting too hot in here later on this afternoon. Fortunately, I have some time to do that. Now, one of the things I had to do, which was a real irritation to me, was I had to purchase another PVC pipe cutter. I accidentally grabbed the wrong one as I was leaving. So I'm going to make sure that this set of PVC cutters goes in the trash. Supposedly we can get new knife blades for this, which would be fine. The problem is the ratchet mechanism isn't working correctly, so it doesn't cut the pipe all the way through.
everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and once again I am down in the studio. I have moved on to another project today, and I am going to be making some penannular brooches. Now, the other day I showed you one of these. I don't think I have one that's not in the tumbler right now. It's just a circle. I have partial circle and a pin on it that you use for closing cloaks and things like that. And I'll show you basically how I make them. This is how they start their life. They start their life as a piece of 6-gauge bronze wire that comes from my supplier. And then they get coiled like that. The coil gets cut using a pair of bolt cutters. And what we wind up with is something that looks like that. Then we start to hammer it, and that's the first stage right there. You can see I've smashed the ends flat and started to shape it. So let's start with this stage, and I'll show you me smashing it. Now what's interesting about this is how hot this piece of metal will get. Personally, I think that anyone who has always wondered what usefulness there was in a physics class should have to do this. This metal is warm, just to put it nicely. In fact, I should check. It's cooled down quite a bit now. He actually bought me an infrared thermometer. This is cooling down pretty quick now. Still 90 degrees though. And it wasn't that long ago when it was more than that, where you wouldn't want to put your hand on it. You have a choice. You can either switch back and forth between pieces or have another spare on hand. I frequently will do multiple pieces at a time, and that lets me shift off from one piece to another so that I don't cook my fingers. What I'm going to do here is I've got those roughly shaped, but I need to take off the burrs. So I'm going to file this. Now, somewhere out there, there's a person who is saying, oh my gosh, you are never supposed to file back and forth for the file. And there's a very interesting lecture that I listened to one time about that by a gentleman who ran the jewelry section of a community college. And he said, BS. Production jewelers do run back and forth because in order to maintain the speed that you need to do production, you can't fiddle around. And every time you pick up a file and you do this thing, you have to set it in place, you have to get the angle right, and it's slipping around and everything else. If I use what they call a power grip, which is what this is, and I brace myself, I can do this 10 times faster. Is it possible that we're actually wearing out the files a tiny bit faster? Maybe. But his figuring was that probably it was made up by somebody who was running a community college jewelry department at a university and was trying to minimize the amount of wear and tear. You cannot waste the time when you're a production manufacturer to fiddle around. Now, there are times when doing a straight stroke is the right decision. But on something like this, where all I'm doing is cleaning up a couple of burrs on the edge, it's totally foolish to sit there and waste my time. And they're my files. So if I, by some chance, shortening their life expectancy, this file is probably already 6 years old. It wasn't that expensive to start with. Now I'm not leaving them out in the rain, but yeah. So I've basically taken the burrs off. I am now going to probably widen this one a little bit more, the end of it. All I'm doing is flattening it. I'm flipping it over because I have to think ergonomically about how my hands are held. That's better. And now I'm going to reshape this just a little by tapping it into place. If I over shrink it, I can fix that with a very non-elegant yank. There we are. I have to have a gap between these two edges. Once that gap is there, I get a roll of bronze, which is right down here. Yeah, I want to make sure I got the bronze and not the brass. There's a difference in the color, but sometimes my lighting in here is not the best. I'm going to measure across here. I'm going to use a heavy sprue cutter, and I'm going to cut this longer than it looks like it needs to be. This is 10 gauge. Well, this is 8 gauge. Why is the 8 gauge over here? There's 10 gauge. Okay, yeah, I used 10 gauge for this. The wrong bundle. This is brass. No, this is bronze. Okay. I have some that's new and some that's older, and the color changes over time. That's why I leave my labels on. If I have any doubt, I don't have to have any doubt. So I'm going to cut this longer than it looks like it needs to be. Now this was curled on a coil, so what I'm doing right now is straightening it out. It does not have to be perfect. I can straighten it out more later. And I'm going to flatten one end of it. Now some people are also going, why do you have that steel plate sitting on top of your anvil? And the answer is because the top of this anvil is a cheap Chinese anvil. And it's too soft, which means it's all marred up. And this is disposable. I have one side that's pretty darn smooth and the other side that's been sort of whacked on hard from making penannular brooches. I have now flattened that out a bunch. Got a little bit of curvature in there because usually when you flatten it out, it gets a little curved somewhere along the line. Tap it sideways to get rid of some of that curvature. Get a pair of pliers. Let's see, that's a little sharp there, so let's clean off the sharp spot. You know, I could put this in a vise, some sort of holder, but if I brace my arm against my side, I can hold this tight enough. Does it ever mean you hit yourself with a file? Sure. But you very rarely hurt yourself, especially if you're paying attention to what you're doing. Then I'm going to bend this multiple times. And then I'm going to slide this on here. The goal is to have this ring part small enough so that it will never come off over the ends. It's not going to come off now, but I'm still going to take it in there a little tighter. So I like to have it a little tighter. There we are, ready to go. I can leave this long if I want to. Some people prefer them longer. I can shorten it up a little bit. The process of sharpening it will shorten it up a little bit. I think I'll take this off about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4. And then the only other thing I might want to do is, if I want to make this fancy, I can take the ball part of a ball peen and create marks on here. I'll use a smaller ball peen. This is a jeweler's size ball peen. And I can, let's see, I want to make this so the pin goes behind, so I am hammering on this side. And this is not sped up. These hammers are designed to be able to be bounced. That's why you have a weird shaped handle. You kind of get them in motion and they will bounce. And you have to control them, obviously. You want to direct where that end of that hammer is going. But all I'm doing is making a whole bunch of what they call peens, which just means little hammer marks on the end of this. And now it's got kind of a dappley look that almost makes it look faceted. Some people really like that. I make it both plain and with that dappled look on there. Now the only thing I need to do is sharpen this with my wet wheel and toss it into the tumbler to get extra shiny. And it's ready to go.